Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. The government is set to table the Gig Workers Bill during this session of Parliament. The bill aims to define gig work, regulate income structures and introduce social protections, all measures that the government says will uphold welfare and rights of workers in the gig economy. So will this bill truly empower gig workers, or might it leave them in a grey area between independence and vulnerability? Let's explore this further. Joining me on the show is Wan Agyl Wan Hassan, who is the founder and CEO of the consultancy My Mobility Vision. Agyl, thank you so much for being on the show with me. I appreciate your time. The Gig Workers Bill was supposed to be tabled in Parliament last year, but it was postponed to allow for more stakeholder consultation. And this was something that you had raised and called for last year before it was postponed. Can I ask you, now that it's expected to be tabled in this session, are you satisfied with the fine-tuning of the bill that has taken place in the interim?
Oh, thank you, Melissa, for having me again. I think for a start, yes, we did ask for the government to hold it back before they tabled it last year, because there are several concerns that we have highlighted, especially when it comes to consultancy with industry players and also other stakeholders. While I really appreciate the effort behind this gig workers bill, it is a significant step towards protecting the large part of the Malaysian workforce. However, after reviewing the data and the discussion with some of stakeholders, we at My Mobility Vision believe that the bill needs further refinement still before it can truly serve everyone in our dynamic gig economy. Because we highlighted a couple of areas that really need more clarity, because we are worrying about confusion that will be caused by this bill.
Which areas that require more clarity?
Well, first of all, we would like to discuss about the clarity and inclusiveness of the bill. I mean, the bill goals is very clear: improving the wages, social security, and dispute of the resolutions. That's very commendable, right? Yet some provisions are still vague. For instance, the language surrounding the what exactly triggers a worker's deactivation, for example, it is not clear enough. Without precise definitions, there's a risk of different interpretation that could lead to inconsistent applications. Moreover, I think only about 12 to 18% of the gig workers felt their voice truly heard during consultations, and not to mention the industry players and the platform owners. And major platforms has expressed outright dissatisfaction. I like to see on record, to be honest with you, of an actual engagement that has been done by the industry player beyond the town hall that they have made happen last 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, to verify that all stakeholders had a fair chance to contribute. Rural areas.
Agyl, quick question: why do you feel like the town hall consultation is insufficient?
Well, this is the thing. When we want to do a formulation of policy and the bill, we need to get everyone to chip in on their views, concerns, challenges, and perhaps proposals from all stakeholders. This is not about just listening to the gig workers, because the entire bill should serve the ecosystem as a whole. But if you just listen to one side of the industry, which is the gig workers, which I have nothing to go against about, without listening to the industry player, the entire regulations was designed based on biasness, and it wouldn't capture the whole industrial concerns.
But biasness towards whom? I mean, in every labor reform, there are winners and losers. Who do you think benefits most from this bill? Is it the workers? Is it the platform? Is it the government? And who are the losers in your opinion?
If based on our analysis, basically we are looking at everyone going to be a loser in this bill. Because while the government trying to address the concerns raised by the industry, the gig workers, eventually those policy formulated without proper consultation will create an effect, I mean, unintentionally will create an effect that will hurt the industry, and at the end of the day, hurting back the gig workers. This is why we need to make sure that the bill, being very inclusive, while we hearing the grouses and concerns by the gig workers, we also need to understand what's going on from the industry so that we can meet them halfway. Because while a government address those concerns by the gig workers, which is that if that's the main objective, that's correct. But the component of regulation is not only the gig workers. it's also involved the industry players, the enabler of the business.
What do you understand to be industry concerns about the bill?
Well, like I said just now, for example, the definitions of certain provision of the law, as I said just now, deactivations, for example, because they are also concerned over interministerial coordination when it comes to regulatory overlap. They are the industry, the platform is currently governed by certain regulations in several ministries. For example, it depends on what sectors are you are in. But when it comes to Ministry of Human Resource new bill, if I still going to take the deactivation part, um, the current regulations under Land Public Transport Act also address that through license conditions and also service level requirement. So in this case, which law will take precedence? Because we still need to refer back to Land Public Transport Act. While we appreciate the gist and the objective of the Gig Workers Act, we cannot deny the fact that the operators are also governed by other regulations.
What specifically is the deactivation provision? What does that have to what does that deal with actually? Could you explain?
I think, for example, if the riders or the e-hailing drivers being deactivated by the platforms due to certain issues or concerns, perhaps safety or maybe ethics or maybe quality of service, then it will become a dispute that need to be discussed at the Ministry of Human Resource level based on the governance of the Act. But it's also will be referred. We need to also refer to the Land Public Transport Act under the e-hailing policies, because the platform also has the responsibility to make sure that the e-hailing drivers need to behave in a way that acceptable based on the SLA and SLR. So in this case, then it might be contradicted, because the objective of Ministry of Human Resource to make sure that the riders are well protected, but at the Ministry of Transport is all about ensuring the quality of service. But I just want to make sure that we are being very clear on this, because when it comes to the gig economy, it's not only about gig workers. Because the way I see the language, the way the ministry, explain in the town hall on these regulations, it seems like it's designed for e-hailing and p-hailing industry alone. While we need to also acknowledge that the gig economy also consists of freelancers. And freelancers might not have the working environment, working condition, and working structure like e-hailing and p-hailing drivers or riders. Because from the freelancers' perspective, they might want to have more strong advocacy or protection over contracts, payment terms, the working conditions, timeline, which need to be addressed in the different provisions. Because how I see this bill, it seems like it's a one size fits all, which it shouldn't be.
So Agyl, wouldn't the nitty-gritty of all the inclusiveness and the nuance of gig work in the diverse gig economy, wouldn't that be worked out by or thought through by the consultative council that the bill allows for? So the bill will pave the way for a consultative council or commission, if I may, on the gig economy, and they will discuss things like wage structures and kind of guiding principles of the gig economy. Can I ask you how you think the commission or the council then ought to think about, or what should its goals be? If you are concerned about a one-size-fits-all with this bill, what should the council, the commission then consider in making its nuance more effective?
Okay, I'm not sure how this bill been designed, because if I would say this, I would really appreciate ministry to really practice a proper policy making process. Because when we talk about the bill is just the empowerment towards the policy.
The punca kuasa, right?
Punca kuasa, right? So we haven't we haven't seen the policy. Because in my experience when I was with SPAD, when we designed the e-hailing policies, we designed the policy first to make sure that we address all the scenarios, address all the challenges and issues in the industry, and then run it through a series of consultations with the industry stakeholders. It took us 5 weeks to run the consultations. The end-to-end process took us about 18 months before we drive that policy towards the provision of the law. So why having that consultation post-bill approval? Because that consultation need to happen pre-bill approval. Because then, if post-bill approval, if the council found out that the policy need to be changed and the current bill cannot be used to empower that policy part, they need to go back to the parliament and ask for amendment. And that would be another entire process, because you need to go through the cabinet. Before that, we need to go to the AG for approval, cabinet's approval, first reading, second reading, then Dewan Negara towards the approval.
Okay. So beyond the fact that we could be losing time or we could be losing effectiveness, what are your concerns if this bill is passed in its current iteration? What impact do you see, not just to gig workers in all their diversity, but to the industry, the platforms, and also the end consumer?
Well, to be honest, there are so many concerns I have if the bill got passed. And I really hope the ministry taking their time to rebuild the entire policy framework first before the bill presented to the parliament. For example, right, I would call it as a premature rollout of the bill, because while it shows good intention, there are some provisions of the law seems premature for me. For instance, the proposed system integration between SOCSO and platform operators. I'm just taking that big example. It raises several questions for us. For example, is the platform ready from the SOCSO side? That's number one. Number two, is SOCSO ready to manage the entire gig workers in the whole gig economy industry? That's number two. Number three, who's going to bear the cost of API? Because you need to integrate, you ask for integration between your system and the platform system. And integration with platform system is not just like that, because there are so many considerations, especially when it comes to data protection, cost. And to be honest with you, based on our consultation with the industry player, we are looking at an increase of 9 to 12% when it comes to cost. And this cost will definitely be transferred to consumer. And these are the things that we believe there is no clear policy clarity, not to mention about the right of, for example, contribution, SOCSO contribution. If I am driving for Grab, and then I also drive for Lalamo for parcel deliveries, do I need to have two contributions, or do I need to have one contribution? In that case, if I have to have one contribution, who should I contribute on? Which platform should I be empowered to contribute? Is it Grab? Is it Lalamo? So these kind of things should be ironed out at the policy level, and then you run through a sandbox so that you can adjust the policy. Because, Melissa, the gig economy, like it or not, it's very innovative. It's very dynamic. I'm not saying that we shouldn't protect the workers. We support the government's agenda to protect the workers. But you cannot just simply do it because of that. You need to look into the entire ecosystem, because mistakes in regulations will cause the workers impact, and we don't want that.
Agyl, thank you so much for being on the show with me. I appreciate your time. Wan Agyl Wan Hassan from My Mobility Vision. We're going to take a quick break and come back and look at this topic. Once again, stay tuned for more on Consider This. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. Let's continue our discussion about the Gig Workers Bill, which is expected to be tabled in Parliament very soon. Joining us now is Jose Rizal, who is the Chief Activist of the Malaysian eHailing Association. He's also the Chair of Koperasi Gig Malaysia and President of the Malaysia eHailing and Delivery Organisation. Jose, thank you so much for joining me on the show. I want to ask you about the narrative around the Gig Workers Bill. The government says that this is a game changer for gig workers. But I'm curious to know what gig workers are actually saying. When you speak to your peers, your contemporaries, what are they saying about how they feel about the gig workers bill?
Hi, thank you, Melisa. Thank you, Astro AWANI. Consider this. We at GM, we completely agree with the statement. It's a game changer. But the gig workers' reactions down there vary, which is understandable to us because the gig economy is dynamic and constantly evolving. So it making difficult for any of us or any government to regulate effectively because this is a global challenge. We heard a lot about the problematic and also the issues arising to these gig workers. However, we at GEM strongly support this bill and will work with the government and all the stakeholders to ensure we can strike the right balance between workers, platforms, and the government themselves.
Okay. Jose, are you satisfied with the level of stakeholder engagement? I understand the bill was actually supposed to be tabled last year, but the government said they will postpone it, they will engage more with all the different stakeholders and listen and fine-tune the bill. On your part, were you involved, were you consulted? Are you satisfied with the level of stakeholder engagement that has happened since?
Yes, we at GM actually we involve and we strongly assist the government as well in terms of providing the information for all the gig workers to respond and to actively involve in all those the events that provided to inform us what's going on and what are the government going to do with us. So, but there's a lot of engagement that's been done by Kesuma themselves. And at the peak of that, our minister, YB Stephen Sim as well, at the town hall last week, involved to conclude that Kesuma are going to bring this bill to this near parliament session. But to us, if you ask about our concern, our gig workers concern, there are two main concerns that I can highlight here. Number one is always about the income. We want a fair income because many workers worry about these unstable earnings and as well as the fluctuating fares. And the second one is the flexibility. We heard a lot from our people, our community, the gig worker, because they might lose their flexibility if this become the regulation for the gig worker. But with this new Worker Act, we at GM believe that workers can achieve better condition than what they have today. If implemented correctly, this bill will provide a clearer framework for fair pay and worker protections without sacrificing flexibility.
Okay. So, Jose, can you explain to me how might this bill meaningfully change the power dynamic between platforms and workers? Because in any labor reform, there's always a kind of a trade-off, a tug of war. One person has to give more than the other. How might this bill improve gig workers' conditions?
Yes, we agree. We can already sense the shift because if you are talking about the platform, they all are very reluctant to participate. However, this is not about taking sides or discriminating against platform. The goal, from our understanding, this Gig Worker Act is to find the right balance, ensuring that platforms continue to thrive while gig workers receive fair treatment and protection. Each sector in the gig economy, especially e-hailing, has different operational model. So responsibilities should be aligned line with the nature of work. The bill must reflect these differences, ensuring that the policies work for all stakeholders.
Do you see any challenges that might come ahead in terms of implementing this bill if it's passed?
Yes, particularly from platforms. Many reluctantly accept regulation because they see it as government intervention in their business models. However, from a long-term perspective, we believe this is the right move. If we want the gig economy to be sustainable, we need a framework that protects workers while allowing platforms to innovate and grow. Without proper regulation, worker exploitation and instability could weaken the sector in the future.
Okay. Can I ask you about gig workers if they might be impacted by more regulation? So, whatever regulation that affects platforms will maybe trickle down to gig workers themselves. I'm speaking specifically about eHailing and p-hailing gig workers. Could that mean a loss of flexibility? Could more regulation mean a loss of flexibility for gig workers like yourself, especially for those who are part-time gig workers, those who actually are not full-time or permanent job in the gig, have permanent jobs in the gig economy? How do you see that? That how it affects platforms might then affect part-time gig workers themselves?
From our understanding, when this bill been implement under KESUMA, I think KESUMA is the defender of the workers' rights. We strongly believe when this act regulated under KESUMA, that the worker are going to strive.
Okay, so what's next for workers? You talked a little bit about how there should be more in terms of protecting workers' rights and workers' welfare. If this bill is just the beginning, Jose, what's next then? What's still missing? What should gig workers be pushing for next in terms of protections and wages and rights?
I can divide this answer in three key areas. Number one is better understanding of the gig workers' rights, because we at this NGO, at our movement GEM, we feel that gig workers are still unaware of their legal rights and protections. We may think that more education and outreach needed for our gig workers. And secondly, building financial literacy. Gig workers should learn how to maximize their income, managing their operational costs, and save for the future. And lastly, stronger unity among gig workers. A collective voice is essential to negotiate fair conditions. The more organized we are, the stronger our position will be when advocating for better protections, wages, and for our rights.
Jose, thank you so much for speaking with me. Jose Rizal from the Malaysian eHailing Association. That wraps up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching. Good night.